Good morning. This is Monday, July the 30th. I'm Ron, and welcome to Storytime. And welcome, thank you very much, and welcome. I am Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, and speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. And the idea of this show is to concentrate more on cultural issues and how they affect our everyday life, how the struggle between right and left in this country is really a struggle philosophically and culturally, and that those philosophies and cultural attitudes have a direct impact on the lives of real, everyday Americans like you and me. I'm going to let Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity cover Washington, D.C., and all that's going on over there. One of the things that I dislike about socialism, and the reason actually that socialism is wrong, is because it's false. And it's not just false as an idea, but it is false in terms of what it requires from its adherents. I remember a situation where I went for unemployment benefits some years ago, and I went to a meeting with the VA rep. And I did so because I got a letter from him, and in the letter, he seemed to be saying that if I didn't attend the meeting, that I wasn't going to get my unemployment benefits, that it was a mandatory meeting, and if I didn't attend, again, I wouldn't get my military benefits. So, as it turned out, that's not the case. He didn't say that exactly. What he did is he phrased things in such a way that I would see what I wanted to see, or see what I expected to see, or read what I expected to read, and draw the conclusions that he hoped I would draw. But he never really came out and actually threatened my benefits. So it was a waste of time. I was frustrated in this meeting, and so he was walking around checking people's participation. Not only did he want veterans to attend the meeting, but he actually expected us to participate. It's a false meeting. It's not a meeting that is necessary. It's optional, and we didn't have to be there after all. And I know that because he said so. But in any case, the point is that he's smiling. He's smiling. He's having a good time. He's got all these veterans that he's conned into coming to his stupid little meeting. And then he comes to me, and I'm not participating much. And so he asked me some sort of a question. I can't remember exactly what it was, like something, are you in a bad mood or whatever. And I asked him, I said, is it important? Because one of the ways that the left controls conversations is by asking questions. The person that's asking the questions is in control and in power. The person that answers the questions is not. So I recognize that one of the ways to put them in check is simply to answer their question with a question, and which is what I did. And instantly, when I asked him, is it important, he got snotty. He got snarling. The smile left his face, his pleasant attitude left his face, and he was nasty about it. And so he and I had an exchange, and that's when I found out, because he said, you don't have to be here. You can leave anytime you want. I said, no, I can't, because I got this letter from you that says, and he says, I didn't say anything in there about you not being able to get benefits. That's when the light goes on, and I realize that I've been had. I've been conned and wasted my time. So, I don't know. I think I just stayed for the rest of the meeting, which was only going to be a few minutes longer, and then went ahead and left. But it's a good technique whenever you're dealing with somebody from the left, dealing with anybody really. Well, I'm going to put it this way: if you act like you're left, I don't care how you vote. I don't care if you wear "Make America Great Again" hat. I don't care what you do. Cloak yourself in the American flag. If you act like you're left, period. Okay, so if you like to use little various power plays and power play with people's mind and try to get into their psyche and manipulate them, you're on the left. End of story. So you get a lefty that's going to come up to you and start with the questions, kind of grilling you or cross-examining you or whatever. One of the best things you can do is answer the question with a question. And it puts them in immediate check. And they have a tendency, of course, to get a little bit upset with that in public in a situation they don't control. The reason he was free to this guy, this I was going to say gentleman, but he's no such thing. This lefty that was running the VA meeting was able to get away with being snarling was because we were on his turf. It was his office, and there was very little, what am I going to do? I'm going to wrestle him to the ground? No. We're on his turf. We all know we're on his turf, and basically it's his rules. So he felt free to be snarling and nasty about it. And but if you're going to find yourself in a public place, they're not usually going to get snarling with you. What they're going to do is they're going to give you a dirty look. That's one of their favorite things to do. Is if you stop them in some way, shape, or form, they give you the dirty look. Because all of this is about getting into your psyche, making you afraid to stand up for what is right. Not necessarily standing up for yourself, but just standing up for what is right. If they can bully and intimidate you into backing down, keeping your mouth shut, not objecting, so much the better. Even better if they can bully and intimidate you into going along with their program, into supporting things you really don't want to support, or supporting things you don't know why you're supporting. That's the best. But if they can't do that, then they want to bully and intimidate you into silence. And like I said, so be prepared for the snotty look, the dirty look, and smile, shrug your shoulders or whatever, and move on. So, and also I had a similar situation with a lefty last night when I was not parking my car, I was coming out of out of a parking spot, and this lefty came by and hit the back of my car, not with his car, but with his hand, and then starts berating me about telling me how I need to get my effing eyes fixed. Well, I should just say it. I'm not on the radio. I should get my fucking eyes fixed, and this kind of thing. A lot of four-letter words, and I just kept driving. Made sure that he was out of the way, backed up out of the parking spot, and took off. I'm not going to sit here and play stupid games with Mr. Lefty and allow him to have the satisfaction of berating me. I'm certainly not going to act as though I feel guilty about something. I was doing what I was supposed to do. He was just simply offended by the fact that I was driving a car instead of walking, riding a bicycle, or taking the bus. And so he decided to let me know it in a violent way. Anyhow, what I got today, next coming up, is a little bit of Tammy Bruce and more of the death of right and wrong. And then after that is going to be House, reading from the Philosophy According to House. So when we come back, Tammy Bruce. Okay, thank you very much. And we're back, and I'm reading The Death of Right and Wrong by Tammy Bruce. I like Tammy Bruce. She's first time I ever heard of Tammy Bruce, she was on the radio. Used to be on the radio out here in California. If she is, I don't know what station she's on anymore. I think she used to be on KBC. And and I listened to her, and I was very impressed with the depth of her insight into the left and how the left works and how the left thinks. A lot of that depth comes from the fact that she was a former lefty, like David Horowitz. So she was a feminist and found that the whole movement was rather left a rather bad taste in her mouth. So she has come around to being conservative, and she relates her experiences in this book about the left and how it operates, particularly with the left's attack on ethics. Because when you get down to right and wrong, that's what we're talking about, ethics. And so what we had been covering is the trial of Muammar Jamia, I can't remember his name now, who shot and murdered a police officer, got the death penalty, and then ended up getting it commuted to a life sentence. And another murderer that basically got off scot-free, and how that was All of that was kind of has been engineered culturally by the left. The death of right and wrong is most dramatic in cases like Montoon Hart's or Mumia Abu Jamal's. There, finally got it right. But it may be more easily seen by taking a look at the core of our culture, the art world. The disintegration of our culture and the conditioning of people into accepting it in silence begins with legitimizing the depraved. This requires a trip to San Francisco. Art and the inhuman. Our institutions of higher learning are places where some sort of moral foundation and understanding of right and wrong are to be reinforced. Right? No longer. While the country's academic intelligentsia work themselves into a frenzy to squelch any kind of speech that challenges the left wing status quo, they are also busily leading the next generation to embrace a perverse moral relativism that will take us further into a world devoid of right and wrong. I'll offer more details about the moral misadventures of the academic and art worlds later on, but consider this for now. At the San Francisco Art Institute, the 24-year-old scholar, Jonathan Yegi, after getting the go-ahead from his instructor, Tony Labat, presented a performance piece for a class in the school's new genres department. The project involved himself and a student volunteer. I don't enjoy giving accounts like the one that follows, but it's precisely the reluctance of the mainstream press to give graphic descriptions of disgusting acts that has kept the general public in ignorance of exactly what sort of art has been allowed to flourish, often with the support of our tax dollars. Here's how Yegi himself described his art to the San Francisco Weekly. And there's a paragraph here in which he goes into, it's very scatological. It's basically his use of excrement as art. And I'm not going to go into the gory details. She's wrong when she says you really need, in order to be able to appreciate the lack of right and wrong or the effect of the left on our cultures, to have very graphic details of what these miscreants are up to. She's just wrong. Okay, like I said, understand it's scatological. It involves human excrement, and use your imagination after that. This depraved trash actually satisfied one of Yegi's course requirements at an institution entrusted with the cultivation and nurturing of our society's next generation of artists. So the thing that I wanted to say here is that all of this started with art, crap as art, literally in some cases. There was one guy that, and it was supposed to be some sort of a protest, but an artist that had put in on display. It was a can, like a tuna can, about something about that size, and on it was it had a printed label, very professionally looking printed label, and basically it said it was the artist's excrement inside. You couldn't see it, whatever was on the inside, so you had to take this word for it, but that's what he was doing. But apparently this was a protest because there were people that were taking a sheep, and they would cut it in half, kill it, cut it in half, and then they would encase it in acrylic and put it on display and call it art. And this all started, this kind of BS, with a guy, a Frenchman. I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but it started with him. He was going to enter an art exhibit, and there were rules as to what you could enter and what you could not enter. And his way of protesting that was to enter. He went out to I guess it's a ceramic place or whatever that produces all kinds of things that are ceramic, and he got a urinal. Okay, so he bought a brand new urinal. He signed it and put it in as entered it in this contest or art show. I think that's what it was. It was an art show, and because he was offended that the people that run the art show were able to decide what constitutes art and what does not constitute art. And he is the guy that started the whole thing. And so now, when you're finding art that's avant-garde, that's really bizarre, the excrement and all this other stuff, it's about nothing other than power. Okay? This is just simply a way of saying, I have the power to decide what is art or what is not art. not you, not anyone else. And the art critics basically go along with this idea because they're as subversive or more subversive than the so-called artists that produce the garbage in the first place. Now back to Tammy. Let's see. In the New Thought Police, I encouraged all of us to speak our minds. The New Thought Police is another one of her books. I encouraged all of us to speak our minds and live as we choose, but what makes us great in our lives valuable is the fact that although we could do anything we please, we don't. The value of freedom is the recognition that the choices we make in the process of exercising that freedom are what is most important and what makes us who we are. And even a little bit stronger is to simply say there's consequences for everything. Part of the left's idea is that we should be free, and in order to be free, you should be able to act with impunity. And to the degree that you cannot act with impunity is the degree to which you are not free. And it's BS. Absolute BS on that part. Nobody gets to act with impunity. The planets, the suns, we all have consequences for our actions. It's a metaphysical reality. It's not something that we made up. That's just the way it is, and it's important to remember that because there are going to be people that are going to try, usually on the left, that are going to try and tell you that you need not suffer any consequences for your actions, and that if you do suffer consequences for your actions, it's probably happening at the hands of some fascist or somebody that's trying to restrict your rights or your freedoms. Let's see. Remember, too, that valuing freedom of expression does not mean remaining silent or withholding our opinion when it contradicts someone else's opinion. We have a duty to interact with those who are determined to change our culture because our very liberty, the right to determine our future and make it, because our very liberty, the right to determine our future and make it worthy of our children, is at stake. And yes, she's right about that it is a future that is at stake because, again, all of this is based on a recognition or an acknowledgement of reality and whether or not we will do so or we will refuse to do so. It's tempting in a lot of ways and for a lot of reasons to refuse to acknowledge reality. It seems as though if we refuse to acknowledge reality, we don't have to accept the things that go with it. Limited choices, for instance, tough choices in some cases. And but if we don't, we get more and more in the habit of refusing to acknowledge reality. We get into situations where anything goes. And this is the way that the left then very subtly, in very subtle ways, begins to dominate not only culturally, but eventually politically. And we end up like France or Italy, and that's not what the United States is all about. We're constitutional, and our Constitution is based on an acknowledgement of reality. Let's see. Unfun Pod. Yegi's appalling, inhuman, and simply wrong behavior is fairly typical of what you'll see in performance art stages today. One of the more famous alumni of the San Francisco Art Institute is Karen Finley. Her art involves forcing candied yams into... Oh, brother. Well, I'm not going to go into that either. Anyways, you'll probably remember Finley. Quite a dust-up was caused when it was revealed that she had received funding from the National Endowment for the Arts to create this garbage. So again, it's very scatological. What she does with yams, where she places them, and what she wants other people to do, and it's just, again, all it is a display of power. I can do this. I'm getting paid to do this. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's designed to be subversive. Subversion is the idea that smart is stupid, right is wrong, and beauty is ugly, and the opposite of those things. Ugliness is beauty, trash is art, that kind of thing. So it's designed to be subversive and designed to create violent reactions in people in the hopes of course, kickstarting the worldwide socialist revolution, ushering in socialist paradise. Good luck with that. Let's see. Even now, I sometimes fall into the trap of asking myself if something is wrong with me for thinking these actions are not just outrageous, but wrong. My answer to myself, after asking if I've grown into some unfun pod person, is a resounding no. Our social conditioning to not question and not judge has been so complete, so successful, that it is now virtually automatic to retreat and wonder and even doubt. What happens? When that happens, all you have to do is ask yourself, is this what I want for my children, for any child, for the next generation? Is this what I want my generation's cultural legacy to be? The answer to these questions is what you should trust. And it isn't even that. It's not about your children and your children's legacy. That's a pretty decent argument, but the most fundamental argument is about you. You know what right and wrong is right and wrong going to prevail, or are we going to let it slide? In other words, be cool and let right and wrong slide. If we let right and wrong slide, we're also then refusing to acknowledge reality. Reality is fundamentally about limits, and so is everything else. That there's limits to everything, and ethics and right and wrong are about limits. There's certain things you just don't do, and so that's the question here really is, are we going to acknowledge reality, or are we going to refuse to do so? Let's be honest. Most of us are concerned about not being aware enough about being so stuck in our present paths that we automatically reject change, even when it might be for the better. These are legitimate concerns. Here, though, we are dealing with a dynamic that is inherently different. The left elite wants us to go blithely along, accepting Yegi and Finley as comparable to what the Beatles represented for modern music. Nothing could be further from the truth. And so what we've got here, and again, this is what I love about Tammy Bruce. She's got a lot of depth, a lot of good stuff to talk about. But they're talking about being stuck in our present paths, that we automatically reject change. And it's an interesting question. How do we deal with change? And the way we do is we make the presumption for the status quo. I, as a conservative, am not afraid of change, but the change has to be legitimate. In order for it to be so, there has to be proven to me with evidence that there is a prima facie case for change. Number one, just to make change for, so we look at this in an art standpoint, and you want to say, well, performance art is, this is the definition of performance art. It is, let's say, stage or ballet, or it is a an orchestra or something like that. Now, if somebody wants to come along and say, well, that's incomplete, and we need to add to it, and they have evidence that there is things that have been left out for whatever particular reason, maybe for political reasons, but that have been left out, that the list is incomplete, then I'm willing again. I'll listen to the evidence, and if they can show that that it is incomplete and other things need to be included, then I will accept that. I will say, yes, let's change. Let's add something, whatever, to it. But that's not the way the left works. The left goes ahead and does something. They often operate under the principle of better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. And so they will just simply go ahead and do something, and then if people get outraged, then they should come back and say, oh, well, gee, I'm sorry. And then they put it on the shelf for a little while and then come back in a couple of years and do it again. Because very often these things are trial balloons. And so if you show me a prima facie case for change, an obvious case for change, I'm willing to do so. I'm not going to be, and this is why it's my definition of conservatism, or actually the correct definition of conservatism, is correct, because there are times in which we need to change. The question is, at what time? Okay, the way the left has things set up now, conservatives are locked in to certain positions. They're almost incapable of change. They come off as being monolithic and absolutely resistant to any type of change, reasonable or not, necessary or not. And that has a tendency to make the people on the right look reactionary and look bad, and put the right in a position where they're going to be unpopular, among other things. So the reality of being a conservative is simply that you make the presumption for the status quo. When there's a prima facie case for change, that's when we start looking at change. And so let's see. Yeah, so that's going to be it for right now for Tammy Bruce. This is still on the same chapter, and it's going to be a long chapter. But the next segment of the chapter is called "The Importance of Red Flags." But again, this illustrates why I like Tammy Bruce. It's deep, and if you read this versus reading what Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity say, you can see how shallow Rush Limbaugh is and how shallow Sean Hannity is. That everything for them is just politics, and that only if we can get enough conservatives elected to enough offices, then automatically everything will be all right. And it's not true. So when I come back, it's going to be philosophy according to House. So thank you very much. And right now we're doing the philosophy according to House, and there's a series of books called Philosophy According to the Philosophy of, in this case House, which was a drama series about a doctor in a teaching hospital in back east, I think in Maryland, and they also have ones about the philosophy and the Simpsons, etc. They take a lot of cultural television programs, just things out of our popular culture to use to illustrate various philosophical principles and demonstrate that philosophy is inescapable. Everybody is a philosopher. The only question is whether or not your theories are sound. Okay, the first reason that others arouse negative feelings in us is that they represent potential obstacles to our freedom. According to Sartre, without interference from others, individuals are typically absorbed in existence. And I wanted to say that when we left off, he was talking about Sartre, and Sartre was saying that hell is other people. Okay, let's see. Particularly in the task of obtaining the things that they need and desire from the environment. Rather than thinking about their experience, they are immersed in it. They act without reflecting. As Sartre explains, the appearance of another person pulls the individual out of this original state of absorption. The appearance of another comes not only as a surprise, but also as a threat. Other people are threatening because life is such that individuals must procure resources for survival and satisfaction, because the resources we strive to obtain are not infinite in quantity. Others are fundamentally competitors, not colleagues. Moreover, while objects can resist acquisition by the individual, they do not normally inhibit an individual's autonomy. However, other people frequently do. Unlike inert objects, people can actively challenge the individual by denying her access to resources, inhibiting her activity, or, most obviously, by attacking her person. So, Sartre basically ignores Aristotle, who wrote extensively about how, and I think it was in his book called Politics, Aristotle's book called Politics, about how social human beings are. That we are naturally social people. We're gregarious. We like to get together. We form families. We form societies. And we form governments. Because we are social and because we need each other. And Sartre basically disregards all of this and comes up with something that he pulls out of his ass. He says, oh, no, we're not social. We're loners. Human beings are natural loners. And we look at all other human beings as potential threats and as potential enemies. And by the evidence of our senses, we know that that is bullshit. The threat that others present to the individual is evident in House in a variety of ways. House himself does virtually everything he can to antagonize his colleagues and patients. This is particularly evident in the relationships that he has with the young physicians he oversees. Though employed at a teaching hospital and charged with the task of supervising 3 promising specialists, House is anything but a nurturing presence in the lives of Doctors Cameron, Foreman, and Chase, and the cadre of candidates who strive to replace the original team in season 4. Instead, he mocks, berates, and intentionally confounds them. Their education under the tutelage of the famous diagnostician takes the form of an ongoing psychological assault as House actively tries to sabotage their confidence and self-esteem. While House's treatment of his subordinates is reprehensible, he exemplifies the threat that others pose in another, even more blatant way. Important to our understanding of his character and essential to our ability to sympathize with him is the fact that we ultimately attribute most of House's malignancy toward others to his own pain. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is the character is a guy that had an infarction, which was a blood clot in his thigh muscle. And they weren't. I don't know if he ever got an operation or whatever, but it leaves him with a limp. It leaves him in constant pain, and he's constantly having to take pain medication just to get around. So, and so this seems a little bit dismissive. He's in pain, and that doesn't seem to mean much, but it absolutely does. House is not proof of the fact that we're all loners. House is a loner because he's in pain. If you could have an episode in which he is free, and they did have an episode in which I think he was, at least for part of the episode, free of pain. They'd done some kind of particular procedure, and he was able to run, he was able to walk without a cane and all that stuff. And if I remember correctly, he had a much better personality. And that's another thing, is that when you're talking about the way he treats people, that's part of his personality. And there's a difference. The left always wants you to look at personality and sociability. The left would not like House because he's antisocial. And but they always that's how they want you to judge people. Are they social? Are they willing to get along with other folks? And on the right, conservatives want you to look at their character. Are they honest? Are they trustworthy? Are they brave? Are they clean? Are they, the whole bit in terms of character? And when you look at House, yes, he has a crappy personality, but he is an individual that is reliable. He shows up every day. He is a person that's thorough. He doesn't go halfway on anything. When he's going for a diagnostic case, he doesn't. He goes all the way. He's also tenacious. He doesn't let little things get in his way. He recognizes certain things as a block or an impediment, and he works his way through it, thinks his way through it, experiments his way through it, tests his way through it, or whatever. So those are three aspects of his character that make House a valuable person, because after all, if we're going to judge people strictly on their personality, House wouldn't have worked at that hospital for any more than one day. After the first day, they would have simply booted him out. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of episodes where his supervisor defends him by saying, yes, he's an asshole, but he is the best damn diagnostician we've got. Now, she's playing there to his skills and to his intelligence, rather than playing to his character by saying not only is he a damn good diagnostician, but he is reliable, and he is thorough, and he is tenacious. So that would have helped. But that's an important thing to learn, is when you're going to size people up and you want to have people as friends, you don't always want to be looking at how sociable they are, how much they smile and pat you on the back, and how friendly, their personality. You want to look deeper. Are these people trustworthy? Are they going to slap you on the back and take your wallet? That kind of thing. So judge people by their character, not their personality. So at this time, that really brings me to the conclusion of another episode of Story Time. We'll pick up this House segment again next week. But until then, thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.